us in prayer, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's bow a moment for prayer. Lord, we thank you for our mayor, the city council, and leaders at every level in our city. Give them grace to bring truth, justice, and stability to our city. Give them the power to do what is right and to rule in fairness. May our city government be known for its transparency. Open our hearts and our eyes to see our communities as you would have us to see them. Lord, pour out a spirit of cooperation between elected officials. Lord, when am I facing a difficult decision, not sure which direction to take, please light my path and help me to make the right choice. Remove all doubt so that I may trust and follow your guidance. Father, we thank you for making us one family under you. We ask for all this in your name. Amen.
Okay, I'll officially call this meeting to order, and if you'll stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first item on the agenda is the open forum. We have one request. If you'll come to the podium, please state your name and your address for the record.
Hi, Mayor and City Council. My name is Sherry Luke, and I live at 901 Lee Lane here in Nacogdoches. And I come to you today because I'm having a problem with honeybees at my property. The guy up in front of me has 2 hives, and last year they swarmed my water feature. I contacted the guy. I asked him, told him, like, dude, your bees need a drink, and he promised to move them and do everything and never done anything. I contacted the animal shelter, and I talked to Teresa, and she advised me to come down here and do it this route. I was hoping this year I wouldn't have to, but they've already started again. And they say honeybee won't sting you, but if you get close to them with a lawnmower and it's a swarm, like what I'm saying, it's a swarm. It's not just 1 or 2 bees. They will sting you. So, they say I've got 1 lung, I can't hardly breathe, and I do not need to be stung. I'm highly allergic, and so I do whatever, he has done nothing he has promised to do. So I'm at just a loss on what to do anymore. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Luke, very much. Okay, we'll go to we'll start with the regular agenda. Is to receive a report and give staff direction regarding the city manager search. I want to say something first. This agenda has been amended, and it was originally scheduled on executive session, and it was brought to our attention when I was on vacation last week that it should be an open session. When I took this office, I was under the impression, and we have counsel here, that anything that has anything to do with personnel should be an executive session. And that's where I put it. And if I erred in that, it's my fault, and I apologize. We absolutely meant to hide anything, not to hide anything. We didn't do anything. We just talked about the process. So therefore, we are going to be transparent. Manager, if it can be an open session, it will be open session. If we start talking about different candidates, it'll probably be an executive session. But if you want to blame anybody, blame me. I'll take the full responsibility for it. It was in no way meant to be a hidden agenda, because there was really nothing talked about but the process. And that being said, now the public can recognize what a great human resources director we have, Ms. Benita Hall. You have the floor.
Afternoon, Mayor, members of council. Just wanted to give you, and primarily I'm seeking advice and counsel from you guys with regard to how to proceed at this point. You have received a couple of emails from me. One of them, we have the job description for the position, various studies from TCMA, as well as one that we did locally with regard to salaries. And in addition, we indicating what traits and characteristics we wanted in the next city manager. What I'm seeking is, we're looking to put all of that together so we can post, but I wanted to get some sort of consensus as to traits and characteristics, things that we need to list, that we need to hold as criteria for the position. So that's why we're here. We've not done anything else prior to this except gather information for you to better understand the position, better understand what some of the what prior brochures and advertisements have looked like, and so you can make those types of decisions.
Do you have an outline, Benita, on where to start today?
No, sir. I think I sent you yesterday. Basically, what I'm looking for is, or what we're looking for, the staff is looking for, is consensus with regard to what traits and characteristics. I know that's going to be a topic of discussion, but we need to kind of. I need to get some sort of consensus with regard to that.
Okay, all right, okay.
Do you need?
Yes, and I'm sorry, I apologize. We have a public comment that's going to be dialed in.
Oh, okay. Okay. No worries.
Miss Ann, can you hear us okay? Miss Ann, are you able to hear us okay? No, I don't think so.
Ann?
Yeah, let me try one more time.
Hello.
Hey, can you hear us all right? Can you hear us okay, Miss
Yes.
Ann? Okay.
I can hear you fine.
Okay.
Yes, this is Ann Keenan, and I live at 609 East Hospital Street. And I really appreciate this meeting, and I very much appreciate, Mayor Johnson, your comments about transparency, because I know this is probably one of the more important decisions that you guys are going to make right off the bat. And I appreciate Benita's openness to just hearing what the council wants. Of course, the council represents the community. So I thought I'd give you a few thoughts and ideas I've had about a city manager. One thing that I thought about is that city council changes every year. And so the council that the city manager is hired by may not be the one that they continue to work with. And so I think that it's actually important to have a plan for the city that will guide the city manager, the choice for city manager, and what the city manager will be doing for the city, because we don't want a city manager that quits after 1 or 2 years. We want one to be with us for at least long enough to accomplish some goals and get things done, hopefully even longer. So I think that we need to really look at what our plan is for city. And I know we haven't adopted a new comprehensive plan, but we've done a lot of work on that one, and we have the old one. Those should be documents that we look at and refer to. I also personally think that we should get someone, and this I'm actually quoting Shelley Brophy from when she talked about the last search, that we want somebody who was forward-thinking, that still had that sense of excitement and wanted to deal with some of our challenges, and that we should be open with them about our challenges, such as our infrastructure and also the opportunities that we're facing. I think we need somebody who's experienced with economic development, and more than just local economic development, but something regional. And someone who has respect for our history, and someone who is familiar with the way the different departments of city government works, because there's a lot involved in engineering, planning and zoning, much more smoothly if we can. So I appreciate the transparency, and I'm looking forward to hearing what your thoughts are, and hope that we'll all work together in the best way possible and pick the best person for Nacogdoches. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ann.
All right, you're welcome. Bye-bye. Oh, do you have any questions for me?
Anybody have any questions for Ann? No, we're good, Ann. Thank you very much for calling again.
All righty, bye-bye.
Okay, Ms. Benita, I'm sorry.
No worries. Yes, sir. I'm just trying to get consensus, because we've started developing the brochure. And from that, we will, of course, get the ad for placement. But I need to make sure that I have everyone's thoughts and at least some sort of consensus when it comes to the position. What the speaker was saying, what are you expecting from the position? What kind of opportunities and challenges they may face when they arrive, and what's expected of them. So I'm hoping that if we can discuss, first and foremost, the job description. I sent you 2 versions of it. I sent you one that was redlined, and the second one I sent you was, one that wasn't redlined, and then the second one was redlined. And the redline one copy was just some thoughts that I had, and some suggestions that I've made with regard to the position. And I just wanted to know your thoughts with regard to, because this description, because I'll use much of this for the brochure.
Okay, anybody want to start with discussion?
I'm happy to start.
Okay, sure.
I have the redlined one, and I have some thoughts about that. Can we back up just a little bit, because I do want to add that I actually had a board meeting about desirable traits, experience, and education, and that up, and I'm going to give it to you. And now this is just people in a board meeting. This doesn't mean that I agree with everything. So I just want to, and I'm going to out if you want me to, because we're going to be looking at that. And so this is the board wanted an understanding and appreciation of Nacogdoches, transparency, fiscal responsibility, listens to us, lives here for people, common sense, wants to. And as far as the city of Nacogdoches, the position description, I just wanted to say I really appreciated how you added new language in here. I thought it was really very helpful, and it seems to me, I'm not sure how you chose what to add or where to put it, but it looks to me like from some of the other cities that I have looked at, and I thought it was real helpful. I just had a couple of little comments on the essential duties that on that first bullet point. Instead of that first line, develop, plan, and implement goals and objectives for the city based on input from the city council, I would take this input from community organizations, all that, leave that the same, but instead add in consultation with and under the direction of the city council. So, I mean, I know the goals and that's just an idea I had. I don't know what the other council members think of it, but the, developing the goals and objectives for the city, I think, you know, the council needs to be a little more active in doing that instead of just the city manager developing them even from our vision. So that's just a question I had for all of you.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so, and under the direction, in consultation with, and I'll give you my notes so you can see that. And then, the same thing with the budget, since we have to approve a city budget. When I was reading that, that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th bullet down. Direct and participate in development and administration of the city budget. It kind of leaves the council out of it, and I know we're very, very involved in the budgeting process, so, and I know that wasn't anybody's intent or anything, but I think it's worth saying in consultation with the council and for council approval, because council ends up bearing the brunt of that. And then on the second page, and I know this is pretty detailed, but it's, to me, it's a great way to start it, looking at the job description. On the top of the second page, I would just take off those S's, develop and present in consultation, because all the other ones are in that tense. But, and the other thing, it's just really minor, but performs duties specified in the city charter, you added that, and I'd put and/or required by city council, because you have
Okay.
charter
Yes, ma'am.
and all that. And that's the only thing I had on this job description. I thought it was really, really helpful, and I don't know if any, I guess this comes from, you know, reading documents all the time and trying to get them straight, but those were my comments, and then I had, I was very interested in the traits and experience thing. I hope we get to that today too. So what we want to see in a city manager, but that's, if we're starting with the job description, that's all I had to add. So,
When did you send the red line version?
2 days ago, maybe?
May just be that I'm pulling it up on my
I
iPad.
haven't found it yet.
oh, sorry, yeah. And maybe we can pull it up. That would be helpful. You think we can pull up the job description and, can we,
My email, can you get to my email at all? Okay.
yeah, we could email it to you if you have.
While he's pulling up my email.
And I apologize, I should have, you know, when we visited yesterday, I should have thought to ask you to, you know, to pull them up, but I wasn't thinking.
When it comes to education and/or experience, just wanted to make sure that we're good with a bachelor's degree, with a master's preferred, plus 7 to 10 years of municipal experience.
So I would like to have that document pulled up if we can, because I had some questions about that, and I couldn't find my document that had that.
That's how Randy types, he just posts.
Y'all need any help down there? I'll tell you how to fix it whenever y'all get stumped.
That's my current one. I'll go back to my original one.
Well, while we're kind of waiting and they're working on this, you sent a sample from Trophy Club
Yes, sir.
close to Dallas.
Yes.
And I really liked, it's not exactly a job description, but it is. It's called Core Values. Can you pull that up for yourself there? Because I really thought that, shared ethical values, norms for upholding and prioritizing the public interest over private interest for the town of Trophy Club. And I understand Trophy Club's not Nacogdoches because it's a planned community. But it talks about service with dedication and respect for our residents, strive for excellence in the service of others. Stewardship, we exercise integrity in upholding the highest ethical standards and promote trust and confidence in those we serve. And teamwork, we treat one another with respect and dignity, fostering a harmonious and cohesive environment that promotes well-being and happiness for all. And that may not be a job description, but it is certainly a character description.
Absolutely.
One of the things is the bullet points that she has made is also covered in when the employee survey was turned in, covers just basically all of those bullet points. And especially with the being transparent within the community. Like some of the employees, the candidate absolutely must be transparent with our citizens, staff, and council. Shoot. Yeah, I gotta go back and pick it up again. Oh, yeah, and that was several of the employees come up with near that statement. Willing to be visible and active participant in the community.
And that's part of the board meeting, both, that's what was, it came out loud and clear, and I think in all of ours, transparency is huge, so. And active in the community, you're right. I agree.
Yeah, it's,
I told you we were gonna be here 3 hours.
You're not gonna wanna talk about the contracts
No.
per se, okay?
I don't think so. It's the bottom one, the traits and characteristics, is that it?
We
No.
pulled that one out.
Okay. I don't care about, do you all care about talking about the contract right now, or?
not
Okay.
me.
All right, we're all good.
Oh, nope, that's the council agenda, sorry. I apologize.
No, that's okay.
No, actually, can I go into my file?
You-
I'll let you play with it.
So
Because I
while
can
you're
just go to
doing
the
that,
city manager search and pull out everything.
we can be brainstorming while you're doing that.
And, because we have someone typing.
Right,
for us,
right,
yes.
right. One of the things that she brought up is and that's on here is something we can talk about, a bachelor's degree with a master's from an accredited college and a master's degree preferred. Do we care about that, or what do we want to talk about degrees?
So I think that there are changes that I haven't seen that were in the red line version that we're really waiting on. Because when y'all read that section, the portion that I have doesn't have that. So
I can read, I have the red line in front of me if you want me to read that
Please
whole
do.
paragraph. Okay.
please do.
So a bachelor's degree from an accredited college or university is a required minimum with a master's degree preferred. That's black, and here comes red line. Plus 7 to 10 years municipal administration experience, 5 years of which is in a managerial or supervisory role or equivalent combination of education and experience. Degrees should be, that was red, this is black. Degrees should be in public administration, finance, business, or a related field closely applicable to city management. And then private sector management experience will be considered. So that is the paragraph. After that, the next bullet is must be bondable and pass all pre-employment screening, including background, drug and alcohol, and physical examination. So which one do y'all want to talk?
Well, I know that I was just on a search committee for SFA, and one thing they did was our equivalent experience without, they didn't require either, any of those degrees. They said if you have equivalent experience, and I don't know if that person exists, but it did exist in our search. So I don't see the reason why you're shutting down.
So that is in the red line version,
Is it?
or equivalent combination of education and experience.
Oh,
But that's in,
How do I get rid of that?
But is that related experience in that field?
Yes, that's what they mean, is, yes, you've managed the city, but some people maybe don't have all those certifications and things that they're asking for, and that gets a little bit in the weeds sometimes.
So in our ward meeting, we had a lot of discussion about whether their experience needed to be municipal experience.
Right.
And I did see the traits and characteristics from the staff, the suggestions they had. I had a question about whether it has to be municipal. Obviously, municipal experience would be preferred, but I just thought I'd throw out, I would like to hear what you all think. Does it have to be municipal experience, or?
So to me, it seems like if we had a great candidate who had spent most of their career, say, in county government, would we be excluding them by saying that that was a requirement as opposed to a preference? I mean, certainly we would prefer someone who had been a city manager in a city exactly like ours, you know, but I don't think we're dealing with ideal situations. I think we're having to deal with some form of reality where we get someone that has the qualifications and traits that we want, that not necessarily has been in exactly the situation we're putting them in, but similar situations.
I agree, because you've got not just municipal government, you've got county government, you've got state government, you've got federal government. So you may have your perfect candidate that comes out of the state or federal government that he or she's not qualified because of municipal experience.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we give preference to that.
Yeah.
If they've been a city manager for a decade and they want to come here, then that would put them a step higher than someone that had been in some other level of government. I noticed in some of what staff had said, preferring Texas also, Texas municipal experience. And I think that's a perfectly good idea to prefer someone that's been in this role in Texas. But if we had a great city manager that had been in Minnesota, we wouldn't want to exclude them from consideration based just on the fact that they haven't been in Texas, right? I mean, that's my opinion at
And
least.
it's possible that there's a city manager out there that has 5 years' experience, but went on to have an incredibly successful business, you know, and so they don't qualify. But they actually could run a business and a city better than the person that has a bunch of degrees.
Right.
So we're thinking that we want to leave that not as a requirement, but as a preference, that experience be in cities or, and I'm thinking, one of the things I was thinking about is I had met for a long time, for a full day, with a city manager in another city that had really been very successful in their comprehensive plan. And so I visited with them, and he's been there more than 20 years, but when he started, he didn't have necessarily all of that experience before. He had different experiences. I'm trying to remember whether it was in the military or it was in business or something. And it was a smaller town, had 20,000 people in it. And he's an incredibly successful city manager. So I don't know if we want, I just don't know if we want to be open to that or preclude it. So when we say requirement, and Ms. Hall, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when we say we're requiring it, then they have to have it.
That's
But-
typically the phrase, yes.
Right,
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
And then if it's a preference, you know, and we solidly prefer or any
Highly
kind of.
prefer,
Highly
yeah.
prefer, right, yeah, with enormously, greatly, wonderfully prefer. You know, we could put language like that in, but not have it as a requirement if they can show other kinds of experience. Is that really where you all are?
You know,
And I
many-
apologize, I'm not finding this, but.
No, it's all right. Take your
You know,
time.
We can
Yeah,
get
we're
a
getting
copy.
printed copies
Oh,
of it.
copies. Oh, there you go.
many younger city managers are not gonna have 10 years of experience. They may have managed a city for 5 years or 4 years. So, you know,
And I'm wondering.
And I
is-
think that's part of the reason that we, And I typically stipulate, or any combination of experience and education that will get the knowledge, skills, and abilities that we're looking for.
Yeah, because we want the best person, not the most, degreed.
And I'm sorry, you mind if I,
No, I don't mind. I was gonna quote one of the staff.
go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to say, I definitely don't think we want to consider somebody who decided they could be, and this is one of the staff quotes, city manager because anyone can do it. So I definitely don't think that's where I'm headed anyway. I just would like to be open because there are people who, we might have a superhuman show up that.
I agree.
And certainly on the other side, working in the school world, there's a group of people that are trying to be superintendents of schools, and they're applying for every job that comes available, and eventually someone gets picked up. I don't want us to be, scraping the bottom of the barrel just because they have experience.
Right.
Mr. Bolden, you've been contemplating, you had something you wanted to say for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I agree.
I understand, I mean, I'm with city administrators every month.
Yeah.
Mainly with DEDCOG. My board meetings with brothers, all of those are city administrators that's on those boards. Now, they question me as to, why didn't y'all go with a professional? And I'm saying, well, we have the ideal person in our human resource to find us a quality product. And they said, well, you're not gonna find a quality product doing it with a human resource director. And they give me instances where this is a turnover position. If the way they look at it, usually it's about a 4-year term. Other ones out of there. The ones that want to continue to grow. So, and at that instant, I said, well, maybe we should do the professional services, but I'm not sure I would like that. And plus, about the educational part, I do know that I've always been told, you gotta, especially when I was with AT&T upper management, that you gotta hire somebody with a college degree. And that was, as a matter of fact, I was told that I could only hire people with a college degree, because if they didn't know the system you was in, they was quick to learn because they had a college degree. And that sort of leans into, is that a preferred or a requirement? Now, I would use preferred instead of requirement, because there is college degrees that doesn't match a city manager position, but I think that they would do well in city government. So, I'm open. But I'm open for preferred instead of required.
I'll echo those comments. I agree with you. And I've also had that question come up about the process we're taking and having our HR department conduct this search. And what I've told people time and again is, I asked the question. I asked Bonita directly, are you comfortable with conducting this process in this way, and do you think we can get a quality candidate? And your answer was yes.
I have done this process before in other organizations, and there are a lot of moving parts to this process that will yield the quality of candidates that we're looking for. And that's why this particular part of it is so critical, because regardless of whether I'm doing it or another agency is doing it, they're gonna look at what you're looking for. They're gonna look at what the city of Nacogdoches stands for and what the city of Nacogdoches believes in, and what the expectations are, and frankly, what the compensation package looks like. And if those aren't amenable, they won't apply. But I think, I think I mentioned this to Councilperson Bellinger, I said.
Kathleen, I'm just Kathleen.
That one of the things they'll look for is dissension.
Yeah.
And no one wants to be elected in a 3-2 vote. Or a 4-1, frankly, because they already start off with someone not wanting them to do well, if that makes any sense. So this process is critical, getting some sort of unified cohesion from the leadership that will be working with this individual and outlining not very specifically, but specifically what they're looking for in this job. It makes our job easy, because if it's too broad, we have a plethora of people who will, oh yeah, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. I have my own budget at home. I can handle the budget for the city, you know.
But that brings up the question, are you going to filter out those that you don't feel like is qualified, that meet the requirements?
Oh, absolutely, but at the direction of the council.
Okay.
I mean, I will certainly be providing my input. If, for example, if, say, we have someone that clearly would not be a good fit for us, I will let the council know that. And it's up to the council to decide at that point. Because that person will not report to me. But that's the same way it would be with the outside firms. They're going to give
Yeah,
you,
But they filtered out before it get to us.
in some instances, it just
Well-
depends on what criteria the council indicates.
Yeah.
Because I have worked with those individuals before, and they will tell you, they will do as you ask. But they will say, this person doesn't meet the criteria that you've outlined, but it's ultimately your decision to make. They're not gonna stomp their feet and say, we're not going to give you this application, because if you specifically ask for it, they're going to give it to you, because that's what you pay them to do.
Yeah, but the last time, the first batch of candidates was completely thrown out the window, because none of them fit the profile that we were looking for. And then they started all over again. And then there's candidates we were more specifically looking for
And
this.
if the council gives my area that direction to do that, I have no problems. I have no problem doing that. I have no problem culling or weeding out those individuals that do not meet the criteria that you set. But I will need, that's what this is. You're giving me the guidance and direction. And if you say, we don't want to see people who are clearly not qualified, you will not see them.
So I feel very comfortable that we have a search firm right here. So,
I'll agree, because I've used them in schools, and a lot of times, I've seen them have somebody sitting back there for 4 years that they can't get placed anywhere. And guess what? All of a sudden, they bring them to the top, fluff them up, dress them up, put a tie on them, send them out there, and, you may or may not hire them, but we've got our own resource right here.
And, there are some excellent search firms out there, absolutely excellent. And I've worked with several of them, both as the potential candidate as well as the person who's hired the consulting firm. So I'm not saying anything against those firms at all, but I will say that they're not going to go get crossways with the council. You give them their direction. And if you just tell them you want to see everything, they will show you everything. They will not recommend it, and they will say that clearly, because it's their professional, they're giving you their professional guidance, and I will do the same.
We did get crosswise with the last group, I'm not gonna call the name anyway, but they probably know it. And the person that was their representative that communicated with the city council, we had him removed and started all over again.
And you guys are welcome to remove me just from this right here, keeping me as HR person, and bringing it, if it turns out not to work, there's still that option.
You're
Of going
good,
to-
Benita, we're good.
No such luck for you.
Okay, where are we now?
I want to add that I think this is a really good discussion, though, because just as we are comfortable with you, because we know you, we're watching this process, you're giving us wonderful input and help and guidance in this process, you may not have the exact, according to the context that Mr. Bolden's talking about, the exact, qualifications. You're not a search firm. And I think in that same light, I would like to be open to quality people who may not be exactly what we can dream up right now. That's why I'm tending to have language that we highly prefer, or rather than rule out somebody that might be unusually competent and an unusually excellent fit for our city. So that's really where I come from, because I've been on a number of searches and have, for the university, and have written out all these terms, and sometimes we get the one that perfectly fit our words, but we're like, oh my Lord, do we, that isn't who we were hoping. I think this is a good example. Be open to people who are quality. I didn't mean to sidetrack us on that, but.
Okay, where are we at?
So, make sure I understand, you're wanting municipal administration experience as highly preferred. Okay, and a combination of experience and education that will get us the knowledge, skills, and ability to do this, to perform this job. Am I getting a consensus from that?
I agree.
Absolutely.
The number of years are good, or are we changing the number of years? I have 7 to 10.
I think that's appropriate. I mean, if we're including the ability to combine experiences and other facets,
I just
think
wanted to
7
make
to 10
sure.
would be
Okay.
preferred.
If it was directly city manager experience, I would say 3 to 5, but if it's open for other parts of the city business, 7 years plus is good.
I agree with that. Okay. Is that all you, Kathleen?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm okay.
Yeah, that's experience either as a city manager or
A related,
a related field.
and we get to choose what related
Yes,
is.
yes.
Okay.
Okay, that's good.
Any other concerns with regard to the job description itself?
I wanted to tell you how much I appreciated you adding that must be bondable and pass all pre-employment screening, including background, drug, alcohol, and physical examination. That is so helpful.
That's
And
pretty
will
typical, yes, ma'am.
save us some
Yes.
tears.
Yes. The next item, I believe, is traits and characteristics for the next city manager. Now, you should have those, and if you don't, we did find that copy, and it's on the screen.
Is there another document, or is this the only one that
This
has
is the only
traits?
one.
Okay.
And there was a general degree, type of management style being, they wanted municipal experience. There was a pretty large consensus from the directors that they wanted someone with municipal experience. There was also pretty large consensus wanting someone who is an excellent communicator, both in the written word as well as verbally. They wanted someone who is not only a manager day-to-day, but someone who's kind of a visionary, and they wanted someone who is a true leader. Someone who allows their employees to develop and become successful, both individually and for the organization.
if we're on the same first page, maybe, I
know-
also,
I have a little, go ahead, sorry.
I was just saying, I really like the term encourages a culture of growth. I thought that was a really nice terminology too.
I have a question about experience with large-scale shakeup and revision of zoning codes. Shake-up what?
I think what was meant by that phrase is someone who's able to handle change and handle because sometimes things are shaken up, whether it's economically, whether it's politically, if the leadership changes, someone who's able to pivot, and pivot effectively, both, and deal with the circumstances as they may occur. And so when they're talking about shakeup, they're not necessarily saying that they're gonna come in and shake things up necessarily, but things happen.
Yeah, I
And
think that
they
needs.
need to have, they want someone that can handle those things that happen. And they may need to pivot periodically. They may need to change their, shift their paradigm just a little bit. And they need someone who's not gonna be, this is the way we've always done it kind of person.
I think that wording needs to be clarified for what you just said, because what happens is, the way I read it was come in, Nacogdoches is 300 years old, it's a different town, it's a little bit special, and if you come in here with an agenda to shake things up, it doesn't work for the people, and we've seen that. And so to me, that's one of the qualifications, that you gotta listen to the citizens. You cannot come in here and just run the town on your own.
Yes,
That's
sir.
my opinion.
I-
You have to
I-
respect our history, where we're coming from.
I thoroughly agree, and that comes out in, at the ward meeting, and I think it's also mentioned in here, but not in the same way, being a listener, and I think we talked about that yesterday. Somebody who is a listener to, I think she's council staff and the community, and who appreciates our city, and who appreciates smaller communities. I think that's is that part of what you're getting at, Brad? Appreciating and.
If these people that come to this meeting are not respected, and they hand in a petition of 400 signatures, I need the city manager to pay attention to that. If they hand in 1,000 signatures, they need to pay attention to that, and not say, well, you people, just because you show up, don't count. You do count. You took 3 or 4 or 5 hours of your life, out of your life, to come and sit in these not very comfortable chairs, and they have a stake. That's what a democracy is about, is how much you care about it and whether you vote or not. So I don't want to get on a soapbox here, but this is something that we did not experience.
Okay, I understood, absolutely. Staff goes on to talk about supporting staff and listening to staff. You're gonna see that in here several times, being supportive of their staff, listening to staff. And support is multiple ways, because you're also gonna see dollar signs in there, but that's a whole other discussion. Support them financially as well as professionally and things of that nature. They want a style of management. I can speak to my section. I want a lifelong learner, someone who doesn't rest on the laurels. You know, I graduated from college, you know, blah, 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 blah ago, and I find there's no need to go back and educate myself. The world is changing every day. And if we're going to remain competitive as a city and as an organization, we have to provide a culture that allows for that, and we have to have a manager that leads by example with regard to that. The same thing with, you know, we talked about this, but a high degree of competence when it comes to municipal operations. My area is so very different than Brian's area, which is so very different from Michael Donnell's area, and the regular, and police and fire. And police and fire in some of our areas are very unique to municipalities. You're not going to find many of those operations in the private sector. The way HR is handled in our area is very different from the way it's handled in the private sector, and they need to have an understanding of that. And that is very critical. Being personable, and I think the personality and the being personable is not only just to staff, but it's also to committees and to the members of the community, and being someone that people are not uncomfortable speaking with, someone that is approachable, if that makes sense. Is there anything that, if you've had a chance to look at these traits and characteristics, aside from what you indicated with shaking things up, is there anything that is absolutely off the question? So because we, of course, will be combining these and putting it into a brochure and getting the draft to you, but I wanted to make sure, is there anything else that's absolutely off the table on this?
Before we get to that, can I just say, one of the first things you mentioned was having someone that's a clear communicator, both verbally and in written words. I think that has to be at the top of our list. I wanted to make sure that I said that. And then another thing that I wanted to mention that I think Larissa kind of said this pretty well, with someone that can block and tackle for staff. I think we need someone that can block and tackle for staff, the council, and our residents. Someone that is our go-to person for the city. It's as you mentioned, that you can come and talk to and help get resolution to whatever the situation is, and can defend whoever needs defending in the case. On things that are absolute no's, I didn't really see anything from my point of view. Interim City Manager Kiplinger noted someone that demonstrates sound moral and ethical compass. I think that's got to be at the top of the list too. But nothing that I saw that absolutely has to be gone.
Now, we're taking out the minimum of 10 years of.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay. I'm
When they've indicated a number of years, we're gonna fall back
Yeah.
to the description.
Okay. I'm good with everything we've done so far. Okay.
Following up on Chad's discussion, I think every time we say they need to be supportive, for example, supportive of staff, we need to add staff, the council, and the community.
Yeah.
All three, that's the critical piece of the city manager, is that he or she represents all of us. So almost everywhere we want to say staff, council, and community, and I would put them all right there together every single time. And I can see from the staff's perspective, but from my perspective, I want some help too.
And there's a way to massage those words where it's not, there was a pervasive us against them for the 2 years that I sat in this audience. And if we can have somebody that is open not only to protecting their staff, I'm not crazy about block and tackle, but protecting the staff and making life easy for them so they can do their jobs, but also keep an eye out for the community's moods and feelings, and don't just say, well, they don't really know. We'll teach them. We'll drag them into the future. Sometimes people don't like to be dragged. They like to be asked.
Understood. Yes, sir.
So, tell me if I'm talking too much too, but speaking of that, I think along that exact same line about how they're dealing with the community when you, on your line, an excellent communicator, both verbally and in writing, prepared and extemporaneously. I would also add, and who understands the importance of communications to and from the community. Because,
Okay,
so clean it up for me, hopefully. But I'm saying it's like, we have to communicate to people too. I mean, we're still getting, well, I didn't understand that, you know, we got a letter, I didn't understand, we were closing off this street and I'm in a wheelchair, and can't we just tell us in advance when you're gonna close down all my methods of getting to the grocery store? So, and I know this council has heard me and the staff has heard me talk about how important it is to tell people what's going on and what they could expect. And so that will be one of my questions. I will guarantee you when we interview people, when we get down to interviewing, you know, what do you think is important for citizens to know, and when do you think, and what's your experience and how they know it? So anyway, adding that. I have other things in there too, but I starred like, you know, this is your section.
Okay.
I thought they were all great.
Okay,
Good
thank you.
lifelong learner. I also think it's really, really important to have someone who appreciates and understands smaller community and historic communities, and at the same time understands the need for growth. So those two things are really critical, and the reason I want them to appreciate and understand small communities is, to me, if we put that in there, that we're not going to get somebody who, you know, we'll be able to weed out the people who really only want to be in New York City, you know. And in the terms of I think you had said this yesterday, but I don't see it here, that they're adaptable. I think that's the term you were looking at, that they're able to handle change, conflict, new situations, and even go outside to get new information. And one of the things we were talking about is there's so much new things that are being developed right now. And to have the skill to be able to find out, do we really want, you know, impermeable surfaces, or are there permeable surfaces we should be? Are there things that we can do so our police doesn't have to sing there? If they don't have to know all of this, but to be able to go and find new technology and find new, and save us money. What are the things we need to be doing to save money with infrastructure? You know, so however that is, I'd like that characteristic or that trait. And I'm looking to, but I definitely would like to see the small community appreciation.
Have that. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Anything else with regard to traits and characteristics?
They need to be an acrobat. They need to be really flexible. They need to be able to adapt.
Contortionist.
They need to be a contortionist. That's exactly what we need.
And I wrote this down from what you said yesterday, but I didn't see it on the piece of paper, but that sees challenges not as limitations, but opportunities. And I think that language would be, is it in there already somewhere?
It's not, but it is something that we're going to talk about because in the brochures, the brochure samples that I provided, it outlines particular, you know, some challenges and some opportunities for the next person to kind of give them a heads up of what's going to be on their plate when they first arrive. And I was wondering if you have some that you would like to include on the brochure.
Bond issuance has to be at the top for me. I know that's, we're coming to the conclusion of the capital needs advisory committees. They'll have their recommendation to us in a little over a month. And then we're going to be marching toward if we are going to do a bond in November and what the infrastructure improvements look like. So that's probably going to be that person's biggest job when they get here, aside from just learning Nacogdoches.
Okay.
I don't know how everyone else feels.
They're gonna have to deal with a comprehensive plan,
Right.
and then they've got economic development that there is none. So, as far as funding,
When you said economic development, I want to make sure I understood what you were saying there. You're saying there's no funding for economic development?
not like there should be. And
Funding.
So inadequate.
Inadequate funding for economic development because 1 cent of that sales tax goes to a hospital district, which is, you're talking about. That's the way it is. So that's gonna be part of their challenge, is to figure out, okay, how do we work around that? If you want economic development and you need funds for economic development. Does that make sense, Benita?
It does.
Okay.
But we're not going to, there's no change in that 1%.
Not until you get the bonds paid off, no. That's a whole different issue.
Yeah,
That I'm
because
gonna address.
nobody wants to take that one on.
Oh, I do. And I will.
That won't be popular.
I know it.
You already
It's
have.
okay.
You already started.
I know. I've got my next meeting in June.
So we have, just make sure we have infrastructure challenges, bond issuance issues, the comprehensive plan, with regard to that?
Finishing it.
Finishing it, okay.
And maybe even providing guidance, providing, why don't we wait till after our meeting on Tuesday? And, because we'll hear more, we'll discuss the whole, and
You can take that off. You can take both of those off. Just,
Both of those?
you can take comprehensive plan and economic development off if you want to.
No, I would keep them both on, but I'm just saying that we'll learn more about the challenges and where we are. So I imagine the new city manager will walk into a partially, some kind of partial, there'll be some questions. So for example, I know in the larger comprehensive plan, we haven't even talked about land use minimally. We've talked about land use, and we've got 2 creeks, and we've got, I can't imagine that we're gonna have everything settled on land use.
I think they will
before
walk
they-
into that.
Yeah,
Whoever it is
right.
will walk into both of those things in the comprehensive plan and the economic
Right.
development.
Okay.
So we're in the middle of several things, and they'll have to be able to slide in while they're running a city.
Understood.
To mind if we need to have someone that's truly qualified to handle those issues. Not someone that's willing to learn, but already well qualified to handle those issues.
Understood.
And not a beginner.
Regard to succession planning, we have a number of our department heads who have been department heads for a decade or more. If they're not already, and this person may come to the role as city manager, because we're already down one person, one director, and with the possibility of there being additional people leaving shortly after their arrival. So they will need to have an understanding of how that works, a true succession plan works. I mean, that's my suggestion, but.
I agree.
Because there may be some staff turnover. We have a lot of employees, both director level and otherwise, that are quite tenured with the organization.
So that actually leads me into the point that I was going to make. We've mentioned a few things that will be challenges for a new city manager. If you and staff think of other things that need to be included and projects that we're in the middle of or bringing to completion, just be missing
Okay.
from our discussion.
And so many of these things that we're talking about that are challenges are also opportunities at the exact same time. I mean, the fact that he's or she is not walking into a fully completed comprehensive plan, they can actually be part of this plan and bring their skills to bear and be creative in it. And I'm thinking of you have said, Randy, a lot of times we're at on the cusp of, you know, it's both an opportunity and a challenge that we are becoming part of the University of Texas system. And it's both an opportunity and a challenge that people now, I just talked to somebody who just sold their home to somebody from France. And so, and then we have who move here who now can work remotely. So that's also a challenge to us. We need to make sure we have the infrastructure to support, you know, the internet, so,
Which brings up a dream of mine.
yes.
People from France or wherever picked this place because it is a friendly, nice,
That's right.
easygoing town. It's not Longview or Tyler, not to disparage them, they're great towns, but we're different. And I think the city manager really needs to understand that in a deep spiritual kind of way. Because we want people to move here, but we want them to move here because of the essence of Nacogdoches, the history of Nacogdoches, the kindness of people here. And I honestly believe that if asked, people here will respond. But if you tell 300-year-old history of rebellion, and
Understood.
you're getting in some deep water there.
I will echo Councilmember Maul's comments. I think most of us could have chosen to be somewhere else, not just today, but in general, we chose to do this for a reason, and we really care about Nacogdoches. And I think we want a team member and a city manager that feels the same way as we do. And we just want a sixth person on this team that loves this place, that just loves Nacogdoches.
Well said.
Here, here.
Okay, if we could talk about the process just a little bit? Sure. We put together the brochure, get the blessing, we put it out there, we're looking at, of course, putting it on TML, Indeed, wherever, TCMA, ICMA, wherever you would like for it to be placed, and you can let me know individually if there's some specific sites that you would like to have the ad posted. The initial review, Mr. Bolden mentioned it. How do you want to handle the initial review? Do you want to see every single application or every single resume, or do you want us to go through and, based on what you're telling us, separate those who meet what you desire and those who do not meet what you desire, the elements of what you desire and don't desire?
I'd personally like to have that discussion when we see how many we've gotten.
Okay.
in.
I agree.
If we
Okay,
get
understood.
two.
We'll table that for a later date. Typically, there's an initial review, and then there might be some sort of exercise for the candidates. Let's say hypothetically you have 10 or 15 that are meeting the qualifications. We don't want to do 10. We typically don't want to do 10 or 15, visits and have folks coming. So we'll do an initial exercise. It can be written. It can be a written exercise. We could maybe set it up with IT to have something that they could do in video, and we can review it. They could do it from where they are, and we can view it from where we are, and then we can separate it at that point. Or are we open to something like that?
I really like the video.
Okay.
Yeah. Add some depth.
It does.
I'm looking to you.
If we can figure out how to get that recording of them, then yes, we can produce it.
Okay.
That's pretty, that's pretty customary now in.
I know there's some, I know there may be some software out there that we can borrow, okay. And then once that's complete, there's a second review of whatever the product is that you've decided on. And then hopefully we'll get that down to a manageable number, ideally 3, 4 people maybe, and then we ask them to visit. Once they and we set it up, it's usually a couple of days. This is my experience. It's usually a couple of days, and so we'll get with you because we'll need your attention for that time period. There will be interviews with, tell me if you have a question about any of this, but this is based on my experience. There will be interviews with you. There will be interviews with executive staff. There will be, hypothetically, the first day they come in, there's an organizational kind of orientation for them, for lack of a better phrase. We started almost a round robin kind of effect where one person's interviewing with you guys, one person's interviewing with staff, one person's going on a tour, you know, something along that line. We'll have a tour of the city. We'll be highlighting some of our major areas, the school district, things like that. We'll have some swag. I'm looking at Brittany. We'll have some swag for all of them, whether it's from the chamber, and they'll have materials. We'll also we need to be ready and prepared to pay for their lodgings and their food and whatever else it takes to bring them to our town. And if typically after the first day, something, you know, hopefully one or two people may rise to the top. And then there might be an opportunity for them to meet with certain members of the community in a more social environment. May even bring their spouse, significant other, you know, just kind of see how they are. And does that all sound pretty good? Okay, I'll flesh it out, and ultimately, if a person rises to the top, ideally after the 1 or 2 day or second day rather, a preliminary offer, contract negotiation kind of starts, and if it's able to be worked out as, you know, ideally pretty quickly, we can do that. Yes, sir.
Could I go back to the video part? Because I know in past searches that I've been on, people, if they write a statement of what they wish they could do, what they want to do, you know, their core values kind of thing, and what they plan to do with Nacogdoches when they get here, if they were given the job, that writing reveals to me a lot more than something I may see on a video and not really, you know, they're performing at that point. Anytime you turn a camera on, people become different. So if you could add to that, say, write me your style. What do you want to do about Nacogdoches?
And we can do, and if you, this is open, this is fluid. We could do both, or,
Well, that's
you know,
what I was
however-
saying, that's
yeah,
what I was thinking. We could do both,
absolutely.
maybe.
And I wasn't going to bring this up now, but let's talk about this, about a video thing later on, because I was just so struck with Malcolm Gladwell's research on this topic about videos. And his whole conclusion is that a video actually gives you bad information, which is interesting. So I'd like to throw that out, that it actually, and that the writing actually shows more about their character, because you have, you know, some people who, the things from your own past history get in the way in a video. Like I may, you know, why is she wearing a bright red dress? You know, what does that mean in her? Or, you know, you see what I'm saying? Certain things like that. So let's put that conversation about a video. I'd like to put that on hold a little bit. And
This is all tentative.
I know,
Yeah,
I
but-
will put
It's
it, I will put
interesting
it on paper and then
discussion.
get it to you. Yes, sir.
But the one problem I have with the writing, those that are seeking positions of city manager and if going from city to city, they have professional writers. They hire professional writers, and it's not coming from their heart and soul. It's coming from somebody else.
There's always chat.
You know, and I'll go along with what everybody wants to do, but it's easy for Brad to get on TV. It's not easy for Randy. It's very, very difficult for me to be in front of a camera. And then the other thing is that you get to see how articulate that person is, you know, like in communication, like when he's dealing with, he or she's dealing with staff, speaking to Rotary, and we can do both of them. You could do a letter and do a video. It doesn't make me any difference. I'm good with either one of them.
So what we said with being able to clearly communicate both in the written and verbal realm seems like we're all saying that we want both of those things. So
Interesting.
being able to have, if they're good at it, even in the scripted medium, maybe they're also good at it in reality. And this is not making our determination of who the city manager is.
No.
This is helping us get to candidates that would be coming to us.
Interesting.
And even a professional, if they write what this candidate should say, it's not gonna read right.
No.
That a professional did it. I mean, if you ask the question, what do you want to do? What's the future of Nacogdoches or whatever? We will get some real revealing answers in conjunction with the videos and stuff. And I know that when we did Zoom conferences, once the person was, well, oh, we like this person, and we brought them in, they were completely different most of the time than the person standing before me is a very different person than remotely on a video screen where it can be edited, or maybe their production values are not that skilled. So, you know, we,
Understand, yes.
yeah.
sir. We're gonna see what we can, glean in that.
You brought up a good point. I hate to interject, but yeah, I need to be on there for the public. He brought up a great point. There's gonna be software that we can obviously get, but depending on where this candidate is, do they have the hardware that's gonna record? Is the lighting gonna be good? You know, some of these are gonna look great, some of these may look terrible. If we are not in control of that process from beginning to end, then
Yeah.
these will be wildly inconsistent from one candidate to the next. So I do really appreciate you bringing that up. It's like we can definitely facilitate that process, but just understand that the quality from video A to B, you know, it may be very different.
I think having that fundamental understanding at the beginning is good for all of us, but also having the video is important, I believe. The production values would be different if the 5 of us went out with iPhones. We would probably get 5 different products. So I say iPhone, we may have Android users. I didn't mean
Right
to
here.
call anyone out.
Android user here. But that also brings up the questions we ask will be critical.
Right,
So
and
I know
and
you'll
while
bring
I would
us-
love to have that discussed here,
Right.
I think that needs to be one of those things that we don't wanna give them a heads up as to what the questions might be.
So you would rather that be in an executive session?
That needs to be, they don't need 30 days to ponder a response.
Ah,
That's great.
interesting. So there'll be some questions that we might send out with an application.
Right,
and
but they'll
other
have maybe
questions-
7 days.
Right, and then other questions we will keep
Yes.
until interviews.
Yes.
So can you give us a little, I don't mean to move.
Let me ask Mr. Kirkland, could we do that in executive session?
So probably not.
Okay. Okay.
Even if it's part of the interview process, I mean,
If you've got individual candidates already tagged that you're gonna start asking questions of, yes. And you wanna tailor your questions there, but the rest of that is really policy and procedure that is a matter of public concern.
okay,
If you are aware of some loophole that I'm not aware of, or some policy, some case law, or opinion that gets us to where we could do that, I'm happy to revisit that.
we can discuss it, but I was just thinking there needs to be an element of, spontaneity, extemporaneous, speaking, an ability to have maybe one of the questions involves the city and they have done their research, as opposed to someone who clearly has done no research. And so giving them a heads up on all of the questions.
One of the unfortunate parts of being a public employer is you give everybody a heads up.
So in effect, if a candidate for this position were to submit a public information request for all the questions that we intend to ask them in an interview, we have to give it to them.
Arguably, yes. Now, the Public Information Act is distinct and different from the Open Meetings Act. So that would be a different analysis under a different statute.
Okay, how about this? We meet in public. We talk about 30 or 40 questions, and then maybe the direction is that I may be given the authority to decide which questions.
That could certainly happen. They could certainly delegate that to you, and you could write the questions out after
Because they approve all of the
understanding.
questions, but then I just decide what's going to be.
They could approve or give you direction on what types of questions they'd like to see without necessarily telling you what the questions should be.
So
Okay,
we're not at the point to decide
No,
questions.
not at all.
No.
Mr. Kirkland, could you do some research into this to find out?
Sure.
I think it would be helpful to find out if we can, meet.
So
and
if the desire is to have questions that generate spontaneous answers from your candidates, then I can look to see if there's a way we can do that without violating the Open Meetings Act or the Public Information Act.
Yes, and if you could specifically, if we can meet in executive session to decide specific questions that then would be released publicly at a certain date. So, but we would meet in executive session to decide those, and if you could find that answer, if that's, or if that would violate the Open Meetings Act. Because this is a candidate search. This is personnel, to me. We're not trying to hide anything from the public. We're trying to keep things quiet until it's time to release it. It'd be like a contract negotiation or something. Anyway, I don't know the law. I'm just asking you if you will look into it instead of,
Sure.
it's not fair to ask you right off the bat to.
Well,
give
I
us
have
a
looked
legal-
I have looked at some of the law around that issue. But I haven't looked at it for that particular point. So, I mean, it deserves pondering from the other angles and see if there's a way forward through it. I mean, if that is your desire to go that route, then we will talk about how we could get you there if we can.
Ms.
That's
Holbrook,
the last place we want to be is in district court.
Agreed.
Indeed.
and also we want to be as open and transparent. I think Ms. Hall brought up some excellent points though, so if we can do it.
But I'm fairly confident that you all can give direction to Ms. Hall about types of questions and things you want to generate spontaneity about, and she could craft those questions for you and just give them to you. So that would not be a problem. So that's one way to get there. It's not the push and shove discussion that you've described that you want, but we can see if we can find another way.
Okay, we're not there yet anyway, are we? We will get clarification on that before we ever do
Absolutely.
anything, because we are gonna be transparent. Okay, now what?
Okay, so we've discussed traits and characteristics, the job description, and in a very preliminary manner, the process. I think I have enough to put together to at least, start finalizing a real solid draft for you as far as a brochure. Compensation, I'm assuming we're gonna put DOQ or something along that line. But be thinking about compensation and what type of compensation package. You have both contracts of the last two managers and what they consisted of. They seem pretty similar. And so based on that, I'm going to, I believe that we're probably going to stay kind of in line with that structure. So please let, but, yes, because the brochure will have a salary and compensation and all of that section. We won't go into a great deal of detail because that needs to be worked out between you and the candidate, whoever he or she may be.
So from your perspective, would there be any benefit to having at least some range rather than, just completely saying dependent upon qualifications? I know we've had that discussion before.
Right. There's some legislation that was out there that talked about salary transparency. And in some instances requiring employers to indicate the salary range. But it's certainly, I'll tell you from my perspective, and the other folks here that have been on the hunt with regard to public sector positions, I don't usually deal with DOQ. I like to have an idea because I don't want to waste anybody's time. And for example, hypothetically, let's say it's not this position, but it's a park superintendent's position, and we put DOQ on there, and this person's used to making $15,000 more than what we're going to offer him or her, and they go through the process, and when we get to that, they're like, no, that's not something I'm going to do. If you have a range, and on the other side, if you have a range, I can guarantee you 100% of the people who will want and expect that top.
That's right.
They will all believe that they
Are worth that.
are worth that top range. And so we would definitely still have to include DOQ. Even if we put the range, we would still say depending on qualifications, because everybody will assume, if it's 1 to 10, I should be paid at a 10 level. And that's what I expect to be paid. But then that's where the discussion is with regard to their qualifications.
It seems to me that some of the top that we have listed down here. Good. It seems that some of the salary that we have listed here, I mean, it's different to live in Houston, different to live in Dallas, different to live in Trophy Club. Because I was looking here in Trophy Club, the average person makes $156,000 a
Sure.
year. So they expect $200,000, which I think was what their pay was, $224,000. But the cost of living in Nacogdoches and the people that are paying it, taxpayers, what is their average salary here?
And we're
No,
trying to,
I'm
that's gonna be,
asking.
I know, but that's gonna be part of the things we put together as part of the brochure. We're still looking for some of that information. We're gonna get with the chamber and various other agencies to see if we can find some of that material to include in the brochure. Because honestly, I don't really know.
It's low.
Yeah, it's about 32,000,
Yeah.
39. It's about our population, actually. That's a big difference, And so, and maybe, and I know I'm talking dreams here, but maybe our town is so neat and so special that someone would take a little bit less than to have the stress of a suburb in Dallas or a suburb in Houston. And maybe they might want to live on this little oasis out here for a little bit less money, where their money goes a lot farther.
Oh, and that's
This will make
absolutely
me
true.
real popular with the staff, but it just seems a little high when everybody else is making $50,000 a year,
And
That's what professors make.
Again, that's a decision that you guys will make.
Okay. Benita?
Not
have
right
you-
now, though.
Have you gotten everything that you need from us tonight?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am, sorry.
It's okay. Is a salary discussion something that is in executive session or an open session? I would appreciate, Ms. Hall, if you would write down maybe a list and talk with Mr. Kirkland about things that you have experienced that might be things that should be in an executive session, and then ask if Mr. Kirkland, if you would look into that to see if what is
Can
the
we even
legal-
interview people in executive session?
I-
Oh, okay. We can do that? Okay.
So just a list in the hiring process of which things need to be, which things are in. I mean, we want to be as transparent as possible, but I'm just saying, we don't need to talk about it here. You could talk about it with Ms. Hall.
The turning point is when you have individual candidates.
Sure, but,
So when it's so you're saying when it's open, when
Prior-
it's
prior to
open
that,
to
we were-
everyone, it's open to everyone.
Correct.
Okay, so when we narrow it down to say 3 or 4, it becomes a little, there's.
You don't have to share the list of people that have applied until you've made your decision. You don't have to share the list of people that you've narrowed it down to. You don't have to share the list of people that you've invited until you invite them. You do not have to have the public participate in your interview questions, and you don't have the public participate in your deliberations over which ones you want. The public doesn't participate in your contract negotiations.
you're in the interview questions, you're saying the public,
They wouldn't be in the interview, but if you're having a set prescribed set of questions, that is part of the procedure that the public has a right to be part of.
well, I mean, I'm totally into transparency, and I really like that, but I think we haven't necessarily followed that same rule in the past. We've talked about principles in an executive session when it comes to contracts, and principles about what we're looking for to,
Contracts, you're already into negotiations.
in one contract, but not in the principles. Anyway, I just would prefer if it were real, if there's a, some clarity about
Hard and
this
fast
whole thing.
rules.
Yeah.
When do we
and
go
I'm
and
sure
when do we
there are-
don't?
Yeah, right, I would prefer it in writing.
Okay.
If that's okay. We just want to make sure we're following all the rules.
Council members, you know, a lot of times with the law, and you live with a lawyer, it depends on who's asking the question and how you ask it as to how the answer comes out. And it's the same thing in the courthouse. So each question you ask will have different nuances to it. Sadly, you're operating in an area that doesn't have a whole lot of clear case law on this, so it's all nuance and which way is risky, which way is less risky. And those are things that there are no bright lines to give you. And if I could give you bright lines, I would. And I gave you some on this evening on your interviews, your contract negotiations. It's all going to be how much risk is involved in taking one path versus another. So I'm sorry, it's not bright lines, it's nuances. So, but I will give you what I can, and I will ponder the questions you've asked to see if there are risks that I have not seen,
Thank you.
or if there are no risks that are really apparent, and let you know which way.
Thank you very much. The only other question I had is like timelines. You were talking about the process. Do you have like months or anything, or is that too early?
Months, I'm
to-
hoping not months, but.
Or, no, but I mean,
um,
just kind of, and that's something you could bring back on Tuesday too. If you think, by this time we should be here and by this time we should be, you know what I'm saying.
Ideally. Typically, when we post typical positions, we post for 30 days. But if we're getting this out to, there might be a first review after a certain period, if that makes sense. We're still accepting applications, but we'll do a first review, and you guys can kind of say yes, no. And then, particularly if nobody's, we don't close it, so that if no one's meeting your expectations, it's still open and we can still continue to accept resumes, and we may do that for 30 to 45 days, depending on the crop of resumes that we receive. But as far as the brochure, we're working with Kevin, our PIO, and he's putting together the elements of it, and we hope to have that in a few days. I will say, I'm out of town for a couple of days, but we will get it to you as soon as possible. And once you guys bless that, it won't take us a couple of hours to get it out, if that makes sense.
And you're gonna do TML and then whatever else you want to do.
ICMA, TCMA, all of those things,
Okay.
and anything else, any other places that you would like.
Yeah, okay.
We'll probably send it to a couple of current city managers. Because, let's be honest, the unemployment is such that we're likely looking for someone who currently has a position.
Right. Right.
And we're convincing them to come here.
Okay. Did we help you tonight?
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Okay. All right, okay. And I know that you're on the agenda for Tuesday evening too. If you have any questions or any,
Just to clarify, you look so surprised.
No,
Oh,
Tuesday is not for this.
right,
No, we
Oh,
had.
is it on?
The only reason you're on there is because the agenda had to be posted. I just want to clarify that. And if we needed some kind of follow-up, and you needed to bring us something on Tuesday.
Understood, not a problem.
you-
And if
Okay.
you don't,
If you're not on the
then
agenda, you
we-
could.
we can just
Okay.
say, nothing to discuss.
Absolutely.
Thank you today.
Oh,
Thank
yes, my pleasure. On Tuesday, okay.
But don't feel like you have to. But it's just if you're not on the agenda, you can't.
I understand.
If you needed to clarify something Tuesday night, that would be the time to do it.
Understood.
If you need
So
more direction.
if we have the brochure, a draft, we can just we can get it on the, so you guys can review and we can put it up for people and you can kind of glean through it if we have something available for
Sure.
you on Tuesday.
Yeah,
Okay,
Tuesday.
okay, thank you.
Okay, anybody got any other questions? Okay, it is 5:40, 5:39. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much for coming. God bless Nacogdoches, Texas.